My name's Haley May, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the DRA. So, the DRA Reading Assessment stands for Developmental Reading Assessment. And at my school district, last year I was a teacher of records. It was my first year teaching, so this will be my second year teaching. We use the third edition of that. So I'm going to kind of show you what you get in your box as the classroom teacher. So you get a book full of all the different assessments, and from those you make printouts, and I'll kind of show you what those look like here in a second. You get a word analysis guide, so this helps you analyze the type of miscues they made. You have your sight words, and you go through the sight words, and you have syllable words, so you can go through all of that. There's another type of word analysis guide, and this one deals specifically with like capital words and fluency issues. And then you've got the student assessment book for the word guide. So this would be where you have the actual assessments that you would then analyze using the other part of the kit. You also have a benchmark assessment guide. So for this, let's say that they were doing a DRA 8, level 8, which would be way below second grade level, which is the grade I teach. I could go in and I could find the DRA level 8 and the exact text that they had read to me and see the miscues that they had made and compare it with the analysis guide. So it's really helpful that if I need to and I'm not as familiar with the student, I can go back through and I can actually have a guide that tells me how to analyze it. I don't have to come up with it on my own, which is really helpful because it was very daunting for me as a first-year teacher, never having done an internship with a mentor teacher, just doing it myself to try and analyze all that. So I really liked that I had an analysis guide. I don't use it anymore now that I'm comfortable with it, and you'll find that whenever you get more comfortable doing DRAs, it's very obvious how to use it, but in the beginning I definitely relied heavily on that. So now I'm going to show you what the student gets and what that assessment will look like. When a student first comes into my classroom, typically if they've been in the school district, then all of them will have a DRA level already that's been tested from the previous year that I will have access to. So I'll already get to see what level that they're at. However, when you have things happen like what we had this past year where we could not administer our benchmarking assessments or our DRAs at the end of the school year, students are coming in and I'm not quite sure what their level is going to be at. Yes, I have their previous DRA, so I have some sort of idea, but I also have this basic word card. And so this also works whenever you have a new student coming into the district. And last year I had 3 that I had to do this with. So I have the student read through these words, and I have a specific queuing system that I use for that. And if the student can read successfully through to whatever word, I then look it up in another book what level that they're at. So after doing this last year, I had one student who came into my classroom, and the typical DRA for a second grade is supposed to be 18 entering the classroom and 28 leaving the classroom. My student came in already at a 28 at the beginning of the school year. I also had another student who came in and she was testing at an 8. So you have those variances. So once you figured out what level that they're at, whether it's from using this word assessment or looking at the previous teacher's score for them, then you go to the box. So there are a variety of levels. I have a second grade kit, and this goes K through 3 for my kit. But let's say that my student tested in at an 8. So I would go up and I would find all of the 8s. And if you can see, there are 4 different books for 8. So you pull out the 4 books and you let the student choose which of the 4 books at that level that they want to read. Once they choose their book, you have them read to you. And this is the DRA assessment that you give them. And this is for benchmarking. So what I do, and this is an 8, so like I said, this is well below second grade. And I'm going to look at one that's below, one that's on, and one that's above. So you can kind of see how the DRA changes. But you start by asking them, you tell them the name of the title, you tell them what it's going to be about. And then you have the student look through all the pictures for this lower level. And as they look through the pictures in the book, they're supposed to tell you what's happening. And you are supposed to keep note of any time they use a connecting word. So if they say and, then, next, things like that. Or use vocabulary relevant to the text, because that tells you how much background knowledge they have. Then, if you use a prompt like, what's happening next? Or turn the page, you have to keep mark of that, because that also tells you something about their reading level and their comfortability using a book. So this is the miscue sheet that you use while they're reading. And what you do is you do omissions, insertions, substitutions, reversals, everything that we've done so far. At this age level, or this level of reading anyway, you do not time at this point, but you do go down and you count. So if they had 7 or more miscues, they're in the emerging. And then you go all the way through, and also percent of accuracy, just like we did in class, so how many they got right. One thing to note about DRA is it does not count as an overall miscue if it's self-corrected. You still mark it over here, but at the top, you only put the number that are not self-corrected. So when you go down here, let's say that they had 7 miscues, but they self-corrected 5. They're still falling into the advanced category. Then it has comprehension questions. So you ask them these comprehension questions. For this age, they have a retelling, so they try and tell you everything that happened. If you prompt, you have to mark it. You ask them questions for reflection. You have them make connections. And then you analyze it on the back as the teacher. So, oral reading fluency, it's got a fluency aspect. You say, did they have word-by-word phrasing? Did they have longer phrasing? Did they have self-corrections? How many did they use? Did they use any type of problem-solving skills? If so, what were the cues that they used? How? And I always take note of that while they're reading. It talks about accuracy, and then you tally up the number of points that they got from each of the categories, and then they get a total score in fluency. You also do the same thing once again for comprehension. How did they comprehend and make connections? Tally that up. Once you've tallied that, you go back to the front and you circle. Were they emerging, developing, independent, or advanced? Let's say that they were advanced in oral reading fluency, but they were developing in comprehension. You put independent as their performance. For my school, they require me to find where a student is independent and developing. So I teach them at their developing level. So let's say that they did really good with this. They were independent or advanced. I have to keep going until I find where they're developing, because that is the level that I will teach them at in instruction. Now I want to quickly show you what an on-grade level looks like. So this would be a student entering into 2nd grade. So at this one, you do not ask them at the beginning to look through the book. You don't ask them to tell you what they think will happen. Once again, you give them the analysis. You give them the comprehension questions. But then you have them take the book and read it to themselves. So you only have them read to a certain page number. Then they take the book and they finish the book on their own. Afterward, you ask them to retell you what they had read on their own. Then you ask them about text features of the book and connections of the book, so it's a little bit different. Once again, you're going to mark it up, but this time it also includes expression in the fluency portion. And I'm going to show you one that would be end of the year 2nd. So this is an end of the year 2nd grade. And once again, you're going to have them read to a certain point in the text. It's a lot more this time. You're timing it. You're taking how long it took them to read. You're doing words per minute in your analysis. You're having them predict, do text features, and then they read on their own. And when they read on their own, they're going to get this summary booklet. So they're actually going to do a write-up that you analyze. Once you've finished whichever of the levels, there is a section called Focus for Instruction. And this is where you can go back to that analysis guide for the benchmarking, and you can look at their miscues, you can look at how they answered comprehension questions, predictions, you can look at their fluency, their rate, their expression, you can look at all of those things. Then you can mark what they need help in. And as you can see, it changes. So at the beginning, it's previewing, retelling, problem solving, doing characters. Then it gets a little harder. It's key ideas and details. It's got some vocabulary. Nonfiction text features are involved. And then it gets even more. You've got scaffolded and summaries. And then it specifically focuses on literal comprehension, rate and accuracy. So you can mark that, and then you have a general idea of how you want to do instruction, and then you can use those things in compilation with all of the other assessments you do in the classroom to form your reading groups, your small groups, and to drive whole group reading instruction.